Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am so thrilled to have with me Lydia Babb, who, as you know, I interviewed her before. She was raised in a religious cult and escaped, and now is leading an incredible, productive life as a manager in a major corporation, having a good time. Um, Lily had to leave the cult at about 16. She spent quite a bit of time there, lived with a fundamentally religious family, has had to go through a number of issues, and we thought that it would be a great idea to have a part two. And
Yes,
part two is how you've adapted in this world. You're young, you're on your own, you support
yes,
yourself,
yes,
and I don't know how much you have in the way of background support in terms of other support, but mostly at this point it's just you,
yes, yes,
basically fending for yourself.
yes.
So, Lydia, the one question I have is when we talked earlier, you said that if it wasn't for people in your life, if it wasn't for the therapy you would
hmm
receive, you would not be alive today. So that makes you today a big advocate for mental
Yes,
health.
yes.
Tell us how that therapy helped you.
I first got into therapy actually. This was several years after I left the cult. I was, a few times I had tried to actually get back into church because I wasn't totally turned off by the idea of, the Judeo Christian religion at the time. And so, like, I had gone back to church, and this was right around the time that I finally broke down and got on antidepressants, had a really bad breakup. I had ended up having to kind of take a step back in my life and end up kind of in square one again. Um, and got to the point where it was, I mean, honestly, I was suicidal. I was not ready to not be alive anymore. Um, and you know, I had my best friend actually at the time really was a big advocate for therapy. And she was like, "Leah, you just really need to go. You need to make an appointment." And I'll tell you that that was the hardest phone call I've ever had to make was to schedule. First of all, it was a psychiatrist appointment because I wanted to get on antidepressants. Um,
Mhm.
just to call and make that very first step, that was the hardest thing. I cried in my car for 15 minutes before I even made the phone call, because it was just so hard to finally take that step and admit, I can't do this all by myself. I need help. I need to find a support system, and I need to find a way to cope with these emotions in a healthy way. Like all of these things that I'm having to now unlearn and figure out what is normal. What is normal, which I don't know that there's actually a, north as far as normal goes. There's no one normal, but for me, what is normal? And so, I called and I set up the appointment and cried through the whole thing. Got into that psychiatrist's office and bawled like a baby. They put me on antidepressants for the first time in my life, which was a huge, huge deal for me because I had grown up, being told that depression, that's just because you don't trust God enough and stuff like that. God can fix everything. And so going and saying, you know what, I need help outside of religion, medical help for the depression that I'm experiencing. That was a really big thing for me. And then, of
Well,
course, they,
what was the
uh,
aha moment for you? What was the aha where you said, "I better get help"? Because it's not too often that you know people who are in such a dark place that you contemplate taking your life. Okay, and
yes,
so there you are looking into this abyss. What was a
yes.
moment that said, "I want to live, I want to move forward, and I'm going to fight this"?
I don't think it was ever really me not wanting to be alive and have a life. It was just that life was so miserable and it didn't feel like there was really a way out. I had just gotten out of a long term relationship where I had lived with the person and um, ended up having to move back in temporarily with my parents who had since left the church, but they were going through a very, very tumultuous divorce, and so it was not an ideal situation. And so, like all of that together, that was really just my breaking point where I was like, okay, I don't want to be alive anymore. That's not the path I decided I wanted. Like, that's never I've always loved life, but it was just so much all at once that it was just hard to even get out of bed in the mornings. Like, it was hard to do the basic things that you need to do to survive. Um,
Let me ask it this way. What made
yes,
you change your mind that said, I want to live? I want to, as miserable as my life is, I want to live. I want to keep going.
I have always I just felt like, that's not actually what I want. That's not what I want. I am having a really hard time, but there has to be a light at the end of this tunnel, right? There has to be a light, and how unfair would it be for me to miss out on the good things that could come by taking my own life, you know? Um, it was just it wasn't even like one solid moment. It was just more of a I just need to take this one step at a time kind of thing. Like
So
one day
you,
at a time, one moment at a time.
and you get into therapy, and how has therapy helped you? What was the thing that was most effective about the therapy?
I mean, I would say having a third party that's impartial to talk about all of these things with, and for them to be like, this isn't normal, this isn't healthy, and just to have somebody to bounce things off of, and kind of help you come up with healthy ways to cope and healthy ways to have interpersonal relationships. Because uh, you know, I mean, growing up, and that was a big thing. I've struggled with codependency, um, depression, anxiety, you name it. um, and it was just like all of my relationships were so unhealthy. I
But
was
was
Go
that
ahead.
caused by being in the religious cult? I
I
mean,
would
was that
say
caused by
that
that or other things?
I would say that the mindset that you have, especially as far as like codependency goes, you know, you're always supposed to bless those that hurt you, right? So instead of setting healthy, good boundaries, you're allowing people to mistreat you and just taking it and loving them in spite of, right? Instead of, you know, some random person comes up to you, says something rude, you're like, wow, okay, I don't think I want to be that person's friend. A normal person would think that, right? For us, it was like, oh, well, this is an opportunity to minister to somebody and to show them the love of Jesus, right? And so you end up not allowing yourself to have an identity because you're trying to be the light for everybody.
And you
Um,
can't. You can't be the light for everyone.
you can't. And that was one thing that my very first therapist told me that was really helpful, and even comes to mind all the time for me now, is you can't fix, cure, or save anybody. If they don't want the help, you can't help them. You
Well,
can't fix,
psychologists,
cure, or save anyone.
yeah, psychologists and psychiatrists who deal with people who are addicted, all the treatment in the world will not help you if you don't want to take the first step to become sober.
Yeah,
And it's the
exactly.
same thing with mental health. If you don't want to take the first step to become well, then you want to do it. My view with me growing up is I always thought, well, things couldn't get worse, so they could only get better. That was my feeling. So I had a sense of optimism. Instead of like being depressed about my situation, I thought, well, it's got to get better sometime. And that was what really pulled me through, to do the
Mhm.
things I wanted to do. But now, do you feel like you're in a much better place?
Oh, absolutely. Even the person I was a year ago, I don't feel like I recognize or identify with. Like, I feel like I have learned and adapted and grown so much, even just in the past year, with, hard life lessons that make you take a deeper look at yourself, who you are, what do you stand for, what do you want out of life, that kind of stuff.
Well, what is it that you want to do? I mean, what is it? Let me put it this way. What is it that keeps you from going back? In other words, now you're in a good place, but what do you do to keep yourself from going back?
Definitely regular therapy appointments.
Uh-huh.
I still am in therapy. And I don't foresee a time where I will not have a therapist on my speed dial. um, you just have to. I found a really great group of friends out here that have been very supportive. Making time to find things that bring me joy and do those things. I love taking my dog on walks to the beach and going and finding new restaurants to try out. I love any and all kinds of food. Like, you name it, I want to try it. I'll try anything
Well,
once.
so do I. That's how I always
Yes.
go up and down in weight. I can look at food and gain weight. Um, so you think you'll need therapy the rest of your life?
I wouldn't say like it's going to be an intense, like, I can't function without therapy. And I don't even feel like, I feel like if I were to quit therapy today, I would still be okay. I feel like it's good to have, for everybody to have a therapist, somebody that you can go to and talk to when things are getting tough and you need some guidance on how to get through it.
And so I see we have your best friend beside you. That's
Yes,
okay.
my baby.
And your baby, and he wants to say hello to the camera.
Yes,
Has your dog been a source of therapy for you?
absolutely, absolutely. My dog, I was living with some roommates that adopted. Her name is Grace. Grace, while I was gone on vacation, and they didn't ask me, and I was not happy. I was like, "You guys can't just be bringing dogs into the house willy nilly." And I walked in the door and I looked at her up on the top of the steps, and I fell in love with her. And I actually adopted her as my own.
And so the roommates you parted with, but you kept the dog.
Yes. Oh, yes. We kept the dog.
You got custody of the dog, right?
Yes, I did. I did. She is a sweetheart.
Well, I think people have a hard time understanding, Lydia, how you can get into such a dark place.
Hmm.
And of course, you got the religious group that says, "Oh man, if you commit suicide, it's a sin." And
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah, and so it's like a lot of emotions going through your mind with that.
Hmm.
It had to be a rough place. If you listen to the atheists like Christopher Hitchens, who's probably the most famous atheist around, he just thinks religion is just some way to control people.
Yeah.
And if you look at history, the Catholic Church in Latin America, you look at all these people that maybe somehow distort the religious doctrine and have an alternative agenda. And that's why a lot of the atheists say, the heck with religion.
Hmm.
Um, so religion, I've seen people thrive, and I've seen people just really not do so well because of the control, right?
Yes. Yes. And I do feel like the level of control and the level of, um, you know, any sense of identity or personhood outside of Jesus was kind of
Mhm.
taken away from you. And you're nothing without him, and that's like all they tell you is, you're nothing without him. Everybody's born a sinner deserving of hell, which, I that's great if that's what you want to believe. That everybody is evil in their heart.
Well,
Like,
they say
that's
we're all
the
born sinners,
message.
right? We're all born sinners. Catholics
Yeah.
believe you're born with the original sin, and
Hmm.
if you're a baby and you die, you go into purgatory. I don't know if that's still the doctrine, but yeah, it's scary
Wow.
stuff.
Yeah, that's
It
crazy.
is scary stuff.
But yes, no, and I do feel like that kind of, especially when you're coming out of something like that and trying to figure out, what do I believe? Because obviously this isn't it, right? There's a lot of questions, there's a lot of uncertainty. You end up, I ended up personally, falling into not necessarily the wrong group of people, but not a good group of people that weren't looking out for my best interest and caring about me and who I was as a person and where I was on my journey. Um,
But
and
the
so
key
that
is
ended up.
you have to care about yourself first,
Yes,
before
no,
other
true.
people can care. I think people
Yes,
sense that. It's almost like a magnet to people who want to be mean to you because they kind of sense you don't like yourself, that you've got these issues, and they gravitate towards you, and it's a
yes,
control thing.
yes,
Well, in terms
for
of
sure.
of being, what are the skills that you picked up now? when you had these bad experiences, you're looking into this abyss, you're looking to the darkness, and I mean, where you were was a very dark place, and I'm so thrilled that
Mhm.
you said, "But no más," that's Spanish for
Yeah.
enough, no more.
Yes.
And you would know that coming from Texas. But the question is, what positive things can you tell us? I mean, how has it helped you today? I mean, no one wants a bad experience. I kind of look at you as the phoenix. You know, that mythical bird that burned and then rose from the
Yes.
ashes? I just see Lydia coming up from the ashes in this new person.
And I do feel like I identify with that because I have been, I hit my bottom for sure.
Mhm.
Um, I would say a big thing in my professional life is, growing up in that environment. First of all, I had to grow up way too fast, right? So I had a lot more responsibility than a lot of the kids my age. Every
Mhm.
time you would go out somewhere, you know, the the one big comment that I would get is, "Oh, you're so mature for your age." "Oh, you're so mature. Oh, you're so responsible." And I would say that every single job that I have ever worked at, I've gotten promoted very, very quickly. Very, very quickly because they can see that I'm responsible and I, take pride in my work and myself and my job. And I would say that that environment definitely cultivated a stronger work ethic than I would have had otherwise.
It's
Um,
interesting you say that. It's really interesting because I've always believed that when people who have to go through adversity and have to go through obstacles, if they come out okay, if they don't let those obstacles defeat them, come out with a higher maturity level than
mhm.
people who grew up without those obstacles. You become, in a sense, more street smart. You become more astute on how to read people, and you become more astute to dangerous situations, right?
Yes, yes, I would say that in some respects. I would also say, being sheltered, I didn't get exposed to the same types of people as you would run into in just normal society as much. And so I would say that I didn't necessarily have all the street smarts that I probably would have done better with had
Well,
I
yeah,
acquired
I don't
those.
know. No, what I'm getting at with that is that you went through this rough patch in the religious community.
Mhm.
The people you met outside, you may have had a normal childhood had you not gone
Mhm.
into it. But
Yeah.
it's that rough patch that you had. That's what made you, I think, more astute. That's what made you more hardworking.
Mhm. Yes. No, I would agree with that. Definitely, for sure.
Because I think situations can either destroy you or they can make you better.
Mhm.
And that's why I want to tell your story. I mean, obviously, you seem like, and this has been told to me, like you've never had a problem in the world, because every time I see you, you have a smile, you're pleasant,
Aw.
you you're no, really, no one would ever know what you went.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That means a lot. That does mean
And
a
I
lot.
think, well, no, I think you project that with everybody. So you took a positive role, you took a positive turn to make your life better. Now you're in a
Mhm.
managerial position with your company. How
Mhm.
has that helped you be a good manager? Have you ever thought about that?
I have not thought about it in that way. I would say that, you know, being made to kind of put my own wants and needs to the side has helped me see things from a broader point of view and come at it from, okay, we're working as a team. How can I make this team, first of all, feel like they're cared about,
Hmm.
feel like what they want and need outside of this business matters if we can accommodate you. Um, just more of a, I guess, a calm demeanor because you kind of had to remain calm in a lot of situations that you probably shouldn't have and kind of push what you felt to the side.
See, I compare your situation to say somebody growing up without a father. I mean, I grew up without a father, and so I was
Mhm.
determined my kids were going to know who their father was.
Yeah.
Happens whatever happens, my kids were going to know their father. And so I can see you saying, I was treated like this. There's no way I'm ever treating anybody else like this.
100%. 100%. And, that's one thing that even growing up, I would always think I've always gravitated towards, like, younger kids that would be, like, younger siblings to me, right? Like, I have adopted so many nieces and nephews that are not related to me, but, I'm Aunt Lydia.
You're Aunt Lydia.
Because
Well, I'm Uncle
yes.
Rudy.
Because I just feel like, if I can take what I've learned from all of these awful situations that no one should ever have to go through and help just one person avoid something like that, or, help walk them through whatever situation that they're going on in their life, then it was all worth it, And I feel like even growing up, it was just like, I never want another person to feel the way that I'm feeling right now with
which
how.
which is why you're a very protective person, which is
Mhm.
why you want to help other people. So
Yes.
that experience created in you perhaps a humanity that you may not have had growing up. I mean, when
Yes.
you look at this generation today and you see this sense of entitlement, I'm sure the people in this generation would think, no, that's not right. I don't feel entitled.
Yeah.
But there's a sense of entitlement. There's a sense of, well, what's in it for me? But
Mhm.
your experience has turned you into a person who's kind and caring and saying, I don't want somebody else to live through this. So
Yeah.
that's how you live your life, right?
Yes. I would, the saying that says the same water that hardens the egg softens the potato. It's the same thing. It's just what do you do with the situation that you're given? And I do feel like that has always been just such a strong desire for me to never make anyone feel less than or like they don't matter because I know all too well how that feels.
So, but so as a manager, you have empathy,
Hmm.
okay, and
Absolutely.
you think about the other people. What other attributes of management has this helped you with?
I'm not sure.
Perhaps getting things done.
I mean, I can operate well in chaos, that's for sure.
Well, that was my point. That was where I was trying
Yeah,
to lead. Because when you're living in a chaotic world, and believe me, my life growing up was chaos, you
yeah,
learn to function there and you feel comfortable
yeah,
there.
yeah. I feel like even just with COVID, actually, I was just like, "Okay," like, "Yeah, this sucks, but, onward and upward." That's all you can do, just take it one day at a time.
That's all you can do, right? That's all you
Yeah,
can do. The only two things you can't avoid are death and taxes, right? And so everything else is, tolerable. And, if you look at the news or read what's happening, and there are a number of people depressed from the COVID, the isolation or whatever,
oh,
but
yeah,
you went through it because, well, what you went through during the COVID was not as bad as what you went through as a child in that religious cult. So for
mhm,
you, it's like a walk in the park, right? Yeah, it's just
yeah,
something I'll put up with.
yes, I would say that chaos is where I thrive, for sure.
Yeah, believe me, I thrive under chaos. I mean, for me, that's like, you know, that's just what I live for. And that's
Yeah,
why I became a litigator, because litigator, you're just in all kinds of chaos all the time because you never know what's going to happen. Uh,
yes, when things are
one of
calm,
the
that's when I get worried. I'm like,
Yeah, I know.
something's wrong."
There's an expression that says still waters run deep. You never know what's going to happen. Now, what advice would you give to somebody? They're in a religious cult. Hey, what would you say to them to make them want to get out? Now, honestly, just to be clear, perhaps not all religious cults are bad. I don't know of many who've been good, but what would you say to them? What would you say to a
Um,
15-year-old girl right now?
that it's tough right now. And, if you're cutting it off at 15, well, you don't have a lot of control over your
Whatever.
circumstances and your environment. You're a minor, you're still in the care of your parents, but, it does get better. It does get better. You do genuinely just have to take it one day at a time, one step at a time, 1 minute at a time sometimes. um, but it does get better and the sun does come out.
The sun will always come out.
It does. It does. And I never in a million years would that 10-year-old girl that got into that cult think that I would be here. Never in a million years. Not in my wildest dreams.
It's easy to feel like you'll never get out of this situation.
Mhm.
It's easy to feel hopelessness, and and I would give the same advice to somebody who say was in my shoes. I would add that, look, if you apply yourself, it will get better.
Mhm.
It will get
Yeah,
better.
and that's one thing. You can't just, lay down and take your circumstances and have a giant pity party. I mean, that's okay sometimes. But you have to look for opportunities to make where you're at right now better. Come up with a strategy. How are you going to get out? Where are you going to go? Be 5 steps ahead of where you are now. Try to work your way out of that as best you can. And it doesn't always, and that's something I'm still learning. I am not a patient person, and if I have a goal in mind, I want it to happen immediately, in 10 days, not in 10 years, right now. But
That would be your downfall, right? If you're going to say there's no downfall, but if you're saying there's something would want to improve on
oh
is
yes,
being impatient.
yes, oh yes, my patient impatience is not ideal. It definitely does not help.
You know, I've been accused of the same thing because I want to make a decision quickly, and often in my situation is I analyze quickly, and usually after somebody else does all the analysis at the end, it usually ends up saying what I thought would happen.
Hmm.
And so because of that, I tend to lose my patience a little bit. Get to the point. I'm often telling people, get to the point. What's your point? Okay. Don't
Yeah,
talk around in circles. So believe me, I feel you on that. It's very
yeah.
easy for me to become impatient. What else do you think is something you should improve on? So you say you're impatient, but what's the other thing?
Carving out time for myself. That's a big one. I don't take care of myself enough. I still try to take opportunities to do that, but I need to take more of them.
Like exercise, run, socialize.
That's yes, just finding ways to, it doesn't have to be big and crazy. Just find something in each day that I can do for myself that brings me a little bit of joy.
Somebody I knew growing up, he says, always pay yourself. And not
Hmm.
just with money, but with time.
Hmm.
Always pay yourself. What about trust? Do you still have issues with trusting people? Is it difficult for you to trust them, or do you find that you can easily trust them?
I would say I do definitely have trust issues. I'll believe it when I see it, is kind of how I operate. Is you take some time for you to prove yourself to me, but at the same time, I do feel like I also have some blind spots where, if you're coming across super nice and I just have a hard time getting a read on stuff like that, where it's like, yes,
How long
I
does
can
it
spot
take?
the obvious
How long does
things. Go
it take
ahead.
for you to? How long does it take for you to trust somebody?
Mm, are we talking relationship, friendship, just in general?
All the above.
I would say it varies case by case a little bit.
Okay, let's talk about a relationship then. How long does it take for you to trust somebody? Forever, maybe?
I would say, we're never at 100%.
You might be at 90, 95, right?
Yeah, yeah. But there's
And
always
what
that,
about with friends?
with friends, there it I would say I have several friends that I trust completely. But it does take time, 8, 10 months.
So you're putting yourself, in a sense, you're still putting yourself in a bit of a shell
Oh,
because
absolutely.
it's almost like having the armor, but just sticking your hand out. Then you're going to stick your leg out. Then maybe another
Mhm,
leg out. But eventually you still have that hand in the door saying, I'm going to open, right? I'm going to
mhm.
open it, and there it is. I'm going to go back in. I think, honestly, when you trust people 100%, um, it's almost like putting them on a pedestal. When you
Yeah.
put somebody on a pedestal, they're going to let you down because nobody's perfect. So trusting somebody 100% means that, you're that they're perfect, and they're not. So I think you have to be prepared for that little bit of disappointment that's going to come. And then at that point, you decide, if it does come, do you want to continue with the relationship or not?
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. And, it it is hard for me to trust people, but like I said, I do have a few friends that I do trust completely.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Few
I
and
mean, I
far
think,
between.
look, trust is an issue for everybody, but more
Yeah.
so when people who have gone through obstacles and adversity. I can
Mhm,
remember a poor girl in high school who was, overweight, and the kids always made fun of her. And
mhm,
so she got to expect that.
mhm.
And one day I said, "Hi, Peggy, how are you?" "What?" Like, "What, are you
Yep.
going to make fun of me?" I said, "No, I just said hello." As
Mhm,
somebody who was picked on, believe me, I was in my share of fistfights. I couldn't see doing that to somebody else, and she didn't know how to take the hello. And the interesting thing is that when I saw her at one of my high school reunions, boy, she was happy. She says, "How are you? Good to see you. This is my husband." So a little bit of kindness back then, can go a long way. But
yeah. Oh,
you
absolutely.
expect that people are going to disappoint you. You expect that you can't trust them because of what you experience.
Mhm. Yeah. I would say, I mean, I feel like I kind of labeled myself as a realist. Um, you know, just take things for what they are. And so it's funny because, my girlfriend, she's very into Hallmark and all that, lovey-dovey romance stuff, and I'm just over here like,
Nah, I don't like
okay,
it.
yeah, that's
Okay.
it's great in theory."
Yeah, let's not say we did, right?
Oh, yes.
Well, that's good. You're in a committed relationship now.
I
Well, that's
am.
good.
Been
Congratulations.
dating Thank you. I've been dating my girlfriend since January, so
Well,
going
that's
strong
good.
9 months. Yeah.
So, Lydia, what is the one takeaway that you want people to know that listen to this? What's the most important message that you want to have? Assume you're talking to an audience of 100,000 people that are desperate to know, for you to give them advice. What's the one piece of advice you would give them?
I feel like I would say that, yeah, right now things kind of suck, like if you're in a hard situation, it sucks. But when I look back on it, even though it was all, pretty awful, I wouldn't change it. I would still go through that again because it did make me who I am today. So don't ever discount that. The things you're going through now are making you the person of tomorrow that you're going to be pretty damn proud of.
That is so true. You know what I have found so many people to say? They can't because of how they grew up. You get the woman or even the man now who's been a housewife or a house husband for 20 years. The kids are grown. So, oh my God, that experience, I can't do anything now. And no experience is ever wasted. Bad or great, you're going to take something away from it. So I wouldn't change my situation. If you said, okay, I can be born into the family of a millionaire, multimillionaire, or be born to a woman on welfare, I would go back to the woman on welfare because she gave me her undivided attention.
Yeah.
And
And I have made some very stupid decisions along the way, but I still stand by those as well.
welcome to the
You
club.
gotta you gotta stand by yourself. No one else
Welcome
will.
to the club.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a great song by George Benson called The Greatest Love of All. I
Mhm,
believe that children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the
mhm,
beauty they possess inside. And the song goes on to say, I found the greatest love of all is inside of me. Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all.
mhm.
And before you can help people, you got to love yourself. You may not always
For
like
sure.
yourself, but you have to love yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
You
for
get up,
sure.
you have a bad hair day. You say, "Oh, I don't like myself," right?
No, I'll open my mouth and be like, I'm so annoying. What? Why
What
do you
anyone
guys like
wants.
me?"
I
What?
am so annoying. I remember asking one of my secretaries, do I have ADD? She says, "Oh my God, do you? You know, you're a
No,
pain in the butt with your ADD or whatever. I don't think I have ADD. I think I'm perfect.
oh, I definitely have ADD.
Hmm.
Definitely. And yeah, not ideal.
Well, Lydia, thank you so much
Thank you for
for
having
the
me.
interview. And let me stay on a little bit after we sign off. But everyone, thank you for joining me and Lydia. It was a very insightful conversation. If you like what you heard, please click subscribe to my channel. I'm up to 115 now, growing slowly but
Heck
surely.
yeah.
I enjoy having, people to talk to, wonderful people like Lydia. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Lydia.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me.